All right, so that's it for strings in this section. We still have a lot to talk about with strings, but we'll get to that later in the course. There's one last video here, has to do with converting data types until we move on to our little project at the end of this section. So it's not going to be anything amazing or particularly impressive, but these projects will grow in scale, complexity, and hopefully impressiveness, coolness. I don't know, but hopefully they get a little more exciting as we go. But right now we just don't have enough tools to actually build anything. We really just have variables, and then I'm going to show you in the next video how to get user input, how to ask or prompt for data. But for now, we need to talk about converting data types. So this will be quick. The idea, we've talked about different data types, integers and floats. How do I take an integer and turn it into a float? Or how do I take a float and turn it into an integer? Or let's say I have a string of the number 8 inside double quotes. What if I want to turn that into the number 8 or vice versa? Fortunately, it's pretty straightforward, and we've actually seen data type conversion already happen when we talked about interpolation with F strings or formatting, where we had a number, like that guess example, which I think was also the number 8, which was an int, but when we put it inside the F string, it was converted into the string version of 8. So we've already seen it happen kind of behind the scenes, but we can do it explicitly by saying, hey, make this thing a string or make this a float. And it looks like this. You use the name of the built-in type as a function, which, this is sort of some language that it needs to be here because it needs to be accurate, but also we haven't talked about things like functions yet. But it looks like this. Here's an example of a decimal, 12.56 blah, 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 saved to a variable called decimal. Now we can use this int function and in parentheses. So with functions, we use parentheses, just like we've done with print. We pass in a variable, in this case, decimal. And then it converts that to an int. And the way that it does that is just by chopping off everything after the decimal, just giving us 12. So it doesn't round, to be clear. That can be confusing. It just chops off that decimal. And if we looked at integer, it would be equal to 12. So we can also do things like this, even though we haven't talked about lists yet. I just wanted to put this here. So we have a list of 3 numbers, 1, 2, 3. Turn it into a string using str, the function, and it puts the whole thing in quotes. And it is a string at that point. Okay, so let's go to my terminal. Let's say I have a number, and we'll just call it num, and set it equal to 12. Now let's do type of num, which should be int. Let's now say num equals float of num. So let's look at what type num is after that, and you can see it's now been turned into a float, and in fact, if we look at num itself, it now has 0.0. So I don't think you would ever really need to do this, but as an example, when we do things like 1 divided by 3, these are both integers, they are turned into floats for the division to happen, and that happens implicitly. But really, all that matters here is that we see this float, which is a function in this case with the parentheses. We also could do the same thing, like let's do int of 99.44445, or 3, and cuts off everything afterwards. And just to prove to you, let's do 99.99. It just gives us 99, so it does not round. So the last thing I'll show you is string, which is str. However, I discovered this just a couple minutes ago as I first tried to record this video. I don't know if you recall, but much earlier I was using a variable called str, which is actually not a good idea on my part. Here we go, str. It works just fine, but this is actually a reserved thing in Python because I should be able to do string of 8 and get 8 like this. But what I actually did is I overwrote the built-in string str function in Python up here. I already lost it, but you saw it hopefully, str, where I had defined str equals something. So I basically overwrote it and erased the initial str. So that's something I've never done before. So we can just close out and run Python 3 again. And now I should be able to do str of 8. And I get 8 in quote. Anyway, just another teachable moment, I guess, which is just a pretty way to say a mistake. But I do think there was some value in it. So if you tried to, you could do something like this, int equals I am a number, like this. And now int is just a variable. And so if I try and do int of 9.4, I get an error. So I did the same thing with str earlier. So moral of the story, lesson here is don't make variables named str or int or print or anything that is a thing in Python, which you'll learn more about what those are as we go on. Anyway, that's all there is to explicitly converting things. Remember that when we use f-strings, things are implicitly behind the scenes converted to strings, or we could do it explicitly ourselves.